Welcome, everyone. I'm James Kempton, Chair of the Commission. If you're here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. The staff will then present their report. We will then ask for public comment. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the commissioners will ask questions in the same order as the presentation. Next, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. After the public hearing is closed, no further testimony can be given. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on Chapter 27 of the City Code of Ordinances, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, Historic Preservation Development Review Committee comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. The ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't done so already, please silence your cell phones. And I'll start on my left if the commissioners will introduce themselves.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carol Post, and I'm the public policy representative to the commission. Thank you.
Ellen Paris Ketchum, attorney member.
Dan Myers, architect.
John Perkup, I practice architecture.
Also, we have staff here tonight: Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Alexis Guzman, and our legal counsel, Dana Crosby Collier. With that, let's go ahead and get started. We're looking for a motion for accept the minutes from the August 5th meeting.
I move to accept the minutes from the August 5th meeting.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architectural Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to this evening's public hearing, both to our applicants and those joining us on our city government television station. I did have a couple brief announcements. First of all, I do have the ARC staff approvals for August that will be entered into the record. I'll provide these to the clerk, and you can accept those by motion at the end of the hearing. Additionally, in your packets, you'll find a couple things to take away with you today. One is our Tampa Bricks and Mortar newsletter, which we produce both for our clients and for other interested parties in the city. And I did want to feature one, I think, rather notable accomplishment, and that is the ribbon cutting for the recent re-bricking of 7th Avenue between 15th and 17th Streets. It was, I think, a monumental achievement by a collaborative effort between the Ybor City community with funding through the Ybor City CRA and the efforts of a number of different city departments, including the Preservation Department. So if you haven't seen the re-brick 7th Avenue, first time the bricks have been there since the early 1960s. Take a ride and enjoy the view and the bumpy road that's there now. We are going to be working to complete 13 blocks of 7th Avenue. So this is just the first phase, with the second phase moving to the east. It's currently in the planning stage. And then also you have a copy of the Tampa Bricks and Mortar, I'm sorry, the Tampa Landmarks and Historic Districts booklet, which was updated earlier this year. We do provide those to landmark property owners and then also other individuals in the city to use as a reference. I use it pretty much every day. So take a look at that and enjoy that. And if you have any questions or have any comments, please feel free to give me a call on that. Lastly, did want to mention that we do have our entire agenda being handled at this evening's meeting, so we will not be holding a public hearing on Wednesday, September 11th. And with that, move on to our preservation in progress segment. We'll be featuring one of the local landmark structures this evening, and I'll ask Ron to come up and present that presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff for Historic Preservation. One of our new segments that we are incorporating into our public hearings is Preservation in Progress. This is a recent addition to our landmarking within the city of Tampa. This is Memorial Park Cemetery. The address is 2425 East Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Just to give you a perspective of the location. This is a segment highlighted in the red rectangle. It has Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to the north. To the west, you have 22nd Street. To the east, you have 26th Street. And then you have a series of single-family and multifamily structures that surround the property. Just to the left, you see Belmont Heights complex. You see the baseball facility that's there. This is a Sanborn map going back to 1951, showing the fabric that surrounded the cemetery at that time. As I stated, you see some of the density that's around there since now some of these open parcels have been filled in, so it has a sense of community. Little background associated with our new landmark. They have this obelisk and they have a marker within here that was erected in 1920, but established in 1919, Memorial Park Cemetery is one of the oldest Black American cemeteries in Tampa. In 1923, the section was dedicated in honor of the Black American servicemen and women, there's women that are in here too, who died in the First World War I, and it's approximately 20 acres located in East Tampa that has over 600 burials. The exact number is unknown. When we look at a site or a building to be significantly added to the landmarking, it has to fit certain criteria. And this came forward to us in a joint venture with the community and with the Preservation Department that was significant under 3 different criteria. Criteria A is the military history of the site. Criterion B was its ethnic heritage. And criterion C was it filled the art installation there as well. The cemetery is a rare resource as a portion of it was dedicated in remembrance of the Black American veterans during the time of racial segregation, and the cemetery was established solely at that time for the Black Americans, as I stated. This is the action that went forward. It's got to be recommended by the HPC, so the HPC is a board, as you all, they look at landmarking buildings and sites. It fit the criteria, the 3 criteria that I stated. On March 7th, it went to City Council as a designation for historic local landmark. And on 19th, they put a marker out there, July 19th, 2024. And they had a dedication on site. So that is this month's Preservation in Progress. Thank you, Ron.
I did want to also recognize Mayor Castor for her leadership in leading the acquisition of Memorial Park Cemetery, and then also supporting and promoting the local landmarking of it so that we can ensure that the cemetery's protection lasts well into the future. With that, we will now move on to the disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, and I'll ask our legal counsel to lead that discussion.
Hi, good evening. Dana Crosby Collier from the Legal Department. Members, does any member have a conflict of interest with any item on the agenda this evening?
I do not.
I have none.
No.
I'd like to make a statement
Yes,
in
ma'am.
respect to a prior conversation that
Yes.
I've had with the Commission's attorney. This relates to the case ARC 2400000368. And in conferring with the Commission's attorney, the fact that the agent for that case is the architect for a project that is nearing completion at the University of South Florida, which is under my oversight from a management perspective. Per the statute, I've reviewed and conferred, and we've determined that any decision that I would make on the matter tonight has no bearing or relevance to that project, and nor would it inure any special private gain or loss or economic benefit to me.
Thank you very much. And has any member had an ex parte communication with regard to any item on the agenda?
I have not.
None.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on now, we do have one continuation on the agenda that we need to act upon. That is for ARC 24-00000312 for the property located at 711 North Franklin Street. And the agent has requested to continue that case until the November 4th, 2024 public hearing at 5:30 p.m.
All right.
Move to continue ARC 24-00000312 at 711 North Franklin Street to the Monday, November 4th public hearing at 5:30 p.m.
All right, we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we see a second. All in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. It is continued.
We're now ready to administer the swearing. Anyone in the audience who's going to be presenting this evening or providing any sort of testimony, please stand and raise your right hand, including staff.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. And with that, we're ready for our first case.
Yes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Our first case this evening is ARC-24-00000336. This is for the address of 1703 West Chaton Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. It is a contributing structure that dates back to 1916. The zoning is multifamily with a RM24. The approximate square footage of the addition is 1,000 square feet. The request is for new construction, for certificate of appropriateness, in addition to the primary structure with site improvements. On this proposed site, there is a primary structure that I stated which is contributing, and there is an accessory structure that dates back, but it is non-contributing. It's been altered severely, and it's listed as an accessory structure, but really it's a glorified shed. I'd like to share some photos with you at this time. This is an interior parcel highlighted in the green. It does face Chaton. To the west, you have Fremont. To the east, you have Rome. There is a functional alley that runs east and west behind the subject site, and then you have an alley to the east that runs north and south. This is looking at the primary structure. It's a story and a half with a dormer in the front. Looking from the side angle, once again, it has a full-length porch, the dormer. This is the west elevation. The abutting property to the west is new construction that this board reviewed and approved probably about 20 years ago. It's multifamily in nature. Moving back to the subject site, this is the front elevation and the east. This little nodule here is part of the original fabric. It was a sleeping porch in the early 20s, and it's been converted into air-conditioned space. This is the abutting property to the east. Just some series of photos for the porch. The porch is in need of some repair, but that has been delegated to staff. That's something that we could do administratively. The owner and the agent wanted to focus on the addition in the back. So continuing down Chaton, this is looking to the east and back in the other direction, which is to the west. Directly across the street, you have new construction. And focusing back on the subject site, this is the rear. As I stated, it's about a story and a half. It has this large gable in the front, that cross gable. This little broken knee roof line appears to be part of the original house. And as it goes through the series of the addition that they're going to show, you'll see how this is going to be kept. This is just focusing on that sleeping area that kind of protrudes to the east. Looking at the deck that's in the rear. This is that non-contributing glorified shed that I spoke about. And the condition of the alley that's directly behind the subject site. We went out there to review the proximity of the accessory structure. Does have a garage door. You see the width of the alley, it's a 10-foot alley. Be very difficult to get into that door, so that's why we went out there and did a little research. To continue some of the challenges that are in the surrounding area, we did a analysis of the street. This is an aerial. Property in question has the red dot on it. You have Fremont over here and you have Rome. This is Chetan here. And what I like to do at this time, I have the series of photos. I like to walk you down Chetan from the east. I'm going to walk you down the south side of the street and cross over Chetan, starting on the north side, the west, and then walk you down here. I want to show you the fabric that's out there now and how the street functions as far as vehicular access. This is new construction across the street to the south. The access for the vehicle is off the alley. This is a structure that's been under renovation for quite some time. They enter off of Chetan. As we work our way to the west, this is on the south side. Vehicular access is from the primary street. Once again, the abutting structure to the west comes off of Chetan. This is a larger period structure that all the vehicular access comes off the alley. This is new multifamily that comes in off the alley, and a period large multifamily that comes in off the alley. Now jumping, well, before I go there, I wanted to show you some of the challenges Chetan have. This picture was taken at about 11 o'clock on a Thursday, and you see the number of cars already on the street. It gets more populated as, you know, people come home from work and everything, so the street is full of vehicles. Jumping across Chetan to the north, this is working from the west to the east. Corner house has a driveway. Next single family house has a driveway. Continuing down the block, there's a driveway there. Once again, more period appropriate style house has a driveway off of Chetan. This is the abutting house to the west, the new construction. Everything comes off the alley as far as the vehicular access, and abutting to the east comes in off the alley. So I wanted to share with you the rhythm along the street of Chetan, that there's a series of structures that are entered from Chetan, and then there's a series of structures that the access comes off the alley. These will be here as you make your decision after the presentation, and I need to share them with you again. Thank you. At this time, the agent could come forward and start his presentation.
Good evening. Jamie Mayer of law firm Hillward Henderson, representing the applicant, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700, and I have been sworn. And I am going to turn it over to Mr. George Lamb, who is the project architect and can provide most of the substance regarding the proposed design. I just wanted to briefly touch on a few things related to the site plan, if I may. So as part of the design, there is one tree you can see on the left that's pointed to with the red arrow that is proposed to be removed. It's been reviewed and cleared by Natural Resources for removal, and it's not a grand tree. There are two trees, as you can see, is pointed to just below the blue arrow, that are being preserved, and there was particular care taken in the design of and placement of the driveway to ensure that there would not be impact to those trees. And the driveway, as Mr. Vila explained, is proposed. It's going to be new, and it is needed to meet the code's requirement for 2 on-site, off-street parking spaces for a single-family home. As Mr. Vila explained, the garage in the back, and we did review this with the transportation department, does not have sufficient backup room to be counted as one of those code-required spaces. So in order to be code compliant, we need that 2-car tandem driveway that is very similar to many of the other single-family structures on Jeton. And those are all my comments. I'll go ahead and turn it over to George here for the more substantive part of the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, committee. I've been sworn. I'm George Lamb. I'm project architect for Jeton. Just to give you a little bit more insight as well. Sorry. Nope. Just showing you the front facade, just giving you a little bit more. Some of the other elements here architecturally, as you notice, we have a small brick kind of retaining wall, which is very common on the rest of the streets. So that is some of our challenges that we're working through in creating this driveway, as you already saw. So what we're proposing here from the demolition point of reference is to remove the existing deck on the rear. There's also some existing pavers. This is also to help accommodate with the impervious ratios. We're also showing where the driveway, the proposed driveway would be here. Back to the same comments as we mentioned about the existing tree, which is have been approved to be removed for all the additions that we'll be doing on the site. At the edge of the street, just showing you what we're looking to do, which is removing portion of that brick. We do have an existing granite curb, which we're going to depress and keep on the site, just to keep that historical precedence here. And then over to the right is what we're proposing, starting from the edge, providing a new driveway and providing the curbs. And then coming up to the driveway, having a kind of pervious pavers in the middle to kind of keep the aesthetics of the architecture around the neighborhood. And then we have the ribbon driveways for the cars. We also had to do a modification for the fence, and I'll show you images of what that fence will look like. And then we're keeping the rest of the, the path that goes to the residence. We would then return the brick to get to the grade levels, so that way we still keep the retaining walls, but more into the directions of the slope on the driveway. Over to the back side, or the rear of the house, this is where the proposed second addition of the house will be added. And we do have a small modification, or basically a new proposed deck, which would be an entry to the rear part of the home. We also show that, we still, or the client still wishes to use the existing detached carport. But again, to Jamie's point, is this not enough clearances requirements for the driveway to uphold an actual car. We do have a proposed natural gas generator. The final location is still yet to be determined, and we're working through with Mr. Vila here on kind of a final location, as well as with the homeowner. The house is on piers, so we're still implementing the same structural integrity of the house and the historic as the house, as well as because we do have an adjacent tree, we want to also protect that tree in particular as well. We will do some pruning. We'll go through the exercises of the pruning for this tree, as well as where the locations of the piers for the deck will be proposed. just to give you a little bit of understanding of where some of the demolition will take place. We will be removing the rear roof to make the accommodations of the second floor, as well as the existing rear kitchen. We will try to keep or preserve the existing window because we wish to reuse those. If not, we will match to the existing of what's there. On the side elevation, so here's the existing door to the kitchen. We're just changing the orientation of the door and changing some of the aesthetics and the exterior of the house. And again, here's the shed roof of the 1 story and the existing 1.5 story on the left. I'll skip over the plans. Here is the rear elevation, the second story, and we do have included 2 dormers to mimic the front, but we wish to give it a little bit more character as well for these dormers, not to be completely, give a little bit of a different look between the front and the rear. So we're just promoting a board and batten kind of look on the 2 dormers, especially because they're small, they're smaller than the front. Here is the new front raised deck to get access to the kitchen, same as it was before, just a new and a smaller a deck in the rear. And then just the small architectural elements of a little tiny shed roof, kind of just to give a little bit of a break of the verticality of that second floor addition. And we also wish to do a 5E metal crimp roof instead of a standard shingle. So that would be the intent there. Here's to the side view. Everything kind of goes down on the left would be remaining the same. And we would preserve all the existing conditions. And then over to the right is what the intent of the new addition of the second floor plus the first floor. And again, the deck side profile with some of the articulation of the dormer above it. We would extend the roof just to give a little bit of coverage for that rear door, which currently does not have one. So we wish to do that. And then these would be a pass-through window. Try to keep it very similar in terms of style. There's a lot of different character windows. So we're trying to keep some of that architectural element intact, but trying to play a little bit with the design elements. And here's just a little bit more in-depth information. The pier. The existing siding does go down to the ground. I know that becomes a bit of a challenge, especially with Florida weather, termites and so on. So we would do some treatment, and on this new side, we would either promote some type of maybe kind of like a hardy board or hardy lap siding, so it's more cementitious, so it doesn't have the same possibilities of getting termites or rot down at that level. And there are pictures just to show what that looks like around the facade. And over to the west or the left side of the house, just to show, again, everything on the ground floor on this side of the house would stay the same, the second floor addition above, and we're trying to keep below the existing eave of the main residence. And then this is the existing dormer, which would receive a 5E metal crimp roofing as well. And just a cross section, just to give you a little bit more in depth, and just to kind of go through some of the rafter tails, exposed rafter tails, which already is seen on the main residence. It is wood construction. We would, again, try to use the existing windows, but if worst case scenario, we would find a replacement window that matches the existing aesthetics of the house. And then here's the piers, which would be calculated with structural and coordinated with structural on the locations, but none of these piers seem to impact the existing tree that's close to the site right now. And then here are some of the materials. And again, just to elaborate a little bit on, this would be the fence for the new driveway. They wish to have these gas lanterns on the front porch and also potentially on the rear entry from the kitchen. And here's a 5E metal crimp. And this is kind of the color and synthetic decking, which is already existing there, just changes the color, changes the materiality. And then we would do a gutter over that porch in the rear. Here is the railing that we wish to implement, which is traditional wood. It would be treated in seal. And these are the existing windows that we wish to reuse on the back, these three, not the one on the side here. And here is the existing lap siding. And we would match that and the color. And here's the pavers that we would use in the driveway strips. Yes, that'll complete my presentation.
Good evening, Commissioner. Ron Velam, staff for Historic Preservation. Staff finds this application is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines. We looked at the plans that were submitted to us on August 19th, 2024. On the staff report on page 3, we have some conditions associated at that time. We did meet with George's team to go over some of the conditions, and I'd like to expand on that now. There is some concrete that's being introduced. There's an apron there and some ribbons. We talked about the scoring pattern. He needs to show you that the consistency of what he's presenting is consistent with the historic fabric as well. The introduction of the 5V crimp metal roof would be historically correct. It's for the whole house. They're going to re-roof. The board and batten is indicated on the dormers. We had talked about the board's position in the past that they want to see some differences from the historic structure to the new, so it could read a little different. So that's one element that he's introduced and is up for discussion this evening. Multiple wall sections, we had him provide so we could go over that. He did have his material palette. The primary house has knee brackets. The knee brackets are usually on the side and in the middle. We talked about the elimination of the brackets to be consistent with the criteria, so it has a distinguishing from the old and the new. He needs to express some concerns over that this evening. The pass-through on the east side, in plan it had 4 divisions, in elevations it had 3. He's made some modifications to the plans tonight, and it looks like it's going to be a collapsible wall system. But if he could expand on that. And then when you see the skirting on the house, it appears that there's no no piers there. The skirting does go all the way down. On the primary house, the skirting canters out a little bit on the bottom, as some of these high-end craftsman-style homes do. This, I believe the illustration that he's providing is going to go straight down. He did talk about the incorporation of hardy as it touches grade. The wood, as it touches grade, is not a typical detail. Usually the wood is up. This house, that the wood does come all the way down. So if there is an introduction of a different material than wood on maybe the last 2 courses, it needs to be expressed and be confined just to those last 2 courses. So the weathering, the dry rot, and the termites can't come up through grade. I believe that completes my presentation at this time. I'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ron. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak for or against this project? All right, seeing no one, we will move on to questions from the commissioners, and we'll start on my right. Commissioner Burkott.
Could you put up your floor plans again? Because you skipped right over the floor plans.
Sure.
Okay, so is, where it says existing bedroom, that wall is remaining, right? You're infilling only in the bottom right-hand corner?
That is correct.
Okay. What's the purpose of the, you call them pass-through windows, but they don't go to the ground. So, I'm just curious what the purpose of those are.
The intent is more of basically almost like a transitional space between the inside and outside without having to use the doors. It's almost kind of like, I guess you could say, a countertop where you would open it up and then they can serve, you know, beverages or food or anything would just go through that window.
Okay. Normally, in addition to a historic structure, have you considered that the addition is supposed to be subservient to the original house? It should be, it shouldn't be taller than, which your roof ledge, I think you said, is right below the top of the existing roof ledge, but this wall is exactly in line with it, and usually additions are intended, and it's part of the Secretary of the Interior standards, that the additions be subservient and not flush with the existing structure. There's no way to distinguish between what's existing and what's new in this case. Would you consider a vertical board or something to separate the original house from the new addition at that location there? Because it is part of the Secretary of Interior standards, I believe, that you should be able to determine what's original and what's an addition.
Sure. I did think about that, and we did have conversations with Ramila about that, but we felt that it would actually lose the character and the consistency of the house. I do respect what you're mentioning, but if it's something that would just approve for the standards, then yes, I would look into doing some type of vertical break just to distinguish the character between the two.
I'm just wondering, the siding so the intention is the existing siding would stop and then the new siding would start, and you would never get those two things to align perfectly, and you'd have a complete vertical joint between the old siding and the new siding? Is that your intention?
We could do something like that to celebrate the distinction between the old and the new, you know, even just like I guess like a bead or something, just to show that distinction.
Okay.
Just very minimal.
All right. Could you clarify where the synthetic decking, you said it's already synthetic decking and you're going to put synthetic decking back?
Yes, I don't know if I can use the existing picture that Ron had. But yeah, this is the porch. This is that little porch deck. And again, it's just the steps and to get into the house.
Okay.
The existing house already has a synthetic deck. So we were
Okay.
just using the same intent. It's a Trex deck, basically.
Okay. Can I ask staff, was that ever approved by, that original deck approved?
This deck, I don't know if it came into approval or not. I don't recall working on this.
But it didn't come up under records for this address as receiving an approval. You usually have.
If it's done under past action, we don't have
Right.
any record of it. That's correct.
Okay. All righty. Can you bring up your window, or your wall section, please? Okay, as drawn, can you zoom into the window, let's just say the window head? Is that where the existing windows are in relationship to the face of the house? Or are they further recessed, considerably further recessed in to create shadow lines?
I would have to double check. I can't confirm that as we speak. But the intent is to mimic what's currently at the residence. So if it needs to go in more, we would do that to show the shadow lines.
It's just a concern. Be sure that if it is an existing window, it should align with all the other windows. If it's a replacement window, you might need to be careful with the installation method and the window brand and type. I think that would need staff review, because it might not let you install, if it's a finned window, it might not let you install it recessed. It might be, anyway, it's a
Yeah.
concern.
There is a way, and the way I've addressed that in the past is, because this is a 2x6, I would take a 2x4 and put that underneath to then have the flange around the windows fastened to the 2x4 and give you that shadow line.
Okay. I have no other questions at this time.
Commissioner Myers?
I'm sorry, the presentation is very difficult to see, so it's a little tough for me to ask the questions that I would like. I do feel, I'm really concerned about the difficulty in distinguishing the old part from the new part. And this is a somewhat strange, or rather it's a well-done addition of a second floor space. I'm not so sure about the eaves, or rather the dormers, or the pass-through, just from a functional point of view. The eaves, the finish, and the dormers, functionally, there doesn't seem to be enough room in front of that pass-through for them to function well. And the finish on the dormer seems, to me, to be questionable and then the roofing on a bungalow does not seem quite appropriate, although staff has, we have to draw the line somewhere, and the staff seems to feel that that's okay. I would like some discussion on that. So those are my concerns at this point, and I'll pass.
Thank you. Commissioner?
I have no questions right now.
You ready for me? Good evening. Thank you for the application. I appreciate the desire to expand and improve the property, and I particularly appreciate doing this with a historic structure in a historic district. I'm not opposed to the concept, and I probably could support it under different conditions. I am very opposed to the curb cut and the addition of a driveway to make this a front access, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit to just describe why I can't support the application as it's presented in that way. First is the curb cut to enable the front access. As you saw, the district, and particularly this block, it's generally a mix of front and rear access ways, but on this particular block, it is predominantly rear and alley access. The alley is very functioning, cleanly paved, very frequently used. The property is using it as rear alley access. There is sufficient parking in the way the lot is designed now, with the fence set off from the alleyway to present parking for 2 vehicles, which should be found code compliant. So I just found that there was no extenuating circumstances or a hardship in any way that would compel front access. And the reason I had a problem with the front access is that a few things. So one, it was noted that you've got, it says a concrete curb in the application, but in fact we know it's a granite curb. The granite curbs are part of the historic fiber. They're meant to be preserved. We go out of our way to make applicants install them. And in this case, you'd be taking it away. You mentioned that it would be embedded in some way. I'm not entirely sure where, but it obviously is going to break up the continuity of that granite line along the roadway. It also is going to require the removal of the street tree. It's a crepe myrtle, nothing special, I'm sure, in the but it is removal of a tree. The question I had about the tree is, it's in the public right-of-way. It appears to me by species and location, it could be a mitigation tree that was installed, which is typically done when other trees are removed around the area. And if it is a mitigation tree, it's very problematic to remove it. It was put there to take the place of a tree removal, and now you'd be taking that one out. And I don't know if it's a mitigation tree or not. I think that's worth asking a question. I'm also concerned about the use of public space for private benefit. The nature of the district encourages the street parking because of the makeup, the composition of the properties. As you saw on the summary tour, thank you, that was very helpful. About half of the block is made up of mixed-use dwellings, and so the street serves as overflow parking, where there is not 2 spots per dwelling. And so to take away the street parking that is there to present a private use driveway takes away from the public. It takes the public access away and the public parking away, probably 2 spots, and they're desperately needed there. It's a very busy street. There's already not sufficient parking, and I think the conveyance of a private use for that, what has been a public use, is just, it's inconsistent with our intentions. And then the last item is that the driveway, it will require removal of that oak. As far as I can tell, I'm not sure if that's being, if that's from the site plan, it's unclear, is it being predicated on the expansion or the driveway?
It's more on the expansion, sorry.
Okay, so if it's the expansion, and I understand it's not technically a grand, but it's grand in terms of its description, its look, and it's towering over the block. It's a shame to have to lose another large tree in that block. So for those reasons, it's not our role to suggest alternative ways. It strikes me that the size and scope of the lot could accommodate a reconfiguration that would allow for the applicants to do what they want to do in terms of the expansion and the enlargement, but not have to go through the process of giving up that street continuity and creating a private drive. So I can't support it just based on the approach that is being laid out today. If there was some alternate approach that came forward, I'm not opposed in any way to the expansion of the property and the improvement of it, but I'm opposed to disrupting the preservation of that historic curb and the practical aspects that it serves the community.
Jamie Mayer, for the
Great.
record again, go ahead, sorry.
Yep, I've still got more questions. You'll have a chance for rebuttal.
Oh, okay, understood.
Okay, so staying on the driveway, what is the scoring pattern? It's gonna be concrete. What's the scoring pattern?
Yeah, so we have every 5 feet is a scoring pattern, as you can see here in the graphics. We're just showing you kind of like a control joint every 5 feet, cross all the way to the back.
Okay, and just elaborate on, you're going to sink the granite curb where it is
Yes.
currently? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so let's go back to some elevations on the addition, please. And let's talk about your selection of the board and batten, your proposed selection for the dormer. What's the reasoning behind that?
For the board and batten, it was just to give, again, to respect the change and the new addition and to show a reflection of the new and the existing. So that's where we were trying to carry that character. So that was the intent behind it.
Okay, the existing siding versus the proposed siding, how are they different? Are they the same size, same
They
material?
would be the same size.
Okay, so how are we making, one of the other commissioners, maybe 2 of the commissioners mentioned, making it subservient, making it obvious that it's a separate, it's an addition. So how are we doing that?
So, I mean, I'm not opposed, or, I know we talked through, but we can change basically the profile, because it is a thinner profile on the existing. So we can make the lap siding a little bit more profile, like a deeper profile than I think is a 4-inch lap right now. So we could go and extend that to maybe a 5, and then show that transition minimal strip between the existing and the new.
Okay. The fencing, you showed a picture of the gate.
Yes.
It appeared to be wood, but I didn't hear you say, so it is wood, and did you give us a size?
So it is wood, and the intended size would just to be about 6 feet tall.
Okay, so let's say 6.
Yeah.
Okay, is that going around the entire rear yard and the property, or is that just across the front?
This is across the front.
Is there an existing fence around the rest of the property?
Yes.
What is that material? What's that look like?
It's also wood, but it's heavily, there's a lot of landscape on that fence, so it's
Okay.
really hard to see it.
Okay, all right. And the brick pavers that you're showing, you had mentioned in the plan that they were pervious. Is that actually a pervious paver?
It was more a representation of what the color, what the intent would be, but it would be more I guess you could say semi-pervious, so it's not technically a complete, pervious where you have no grout or anything like that in between it, or, I guess you could say that it's not intended to be grout filled, it's more sand filled, so there's still runoff that would seep through.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to the knee brackets. Explain those again.
So on the, I guess it would be the main. So you can see they have brackets on the two sides of the gable.
Mm-hmm.
It was a discussion piece of removing them. I had originally intended to put them in there because there are some on the gables on the side of the house, but you can't really see it too well. So this is more the predominant kind of look, and it is on the rear part of the house, so it's up in discussion. I kind of showed with it, or the intention was to show with it. I do have the two down below, but it's more for structural reinforcement for that little awning.
So those two that are kind of peeking out are those are the only two I see, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you didn't do them higher for what reason?
Again, it was to show the distinction between the existing and the new.
Okay, okay. All right, let's see. All right, we talked about the deck and the railing. That's gonna be the synthetic material. Are they reusing the decking? Is that what no? So-
No.
Okay. Okay. All right, so then go back to your detail where you showed your siding. I think it was your cross-section that showed the pier. And if you'll zoom into it, because I know you mentioned that the siding was gonna go down to the ground, but I didn't necessarily read that on this cross-section.
Yeah, it's just a graphic. It should go down further. I just had to graphically stop at this point. But the intent is to go down and follow the same as the existing house.
So, you heard Ron mention, typically the hardy board material is not allowed on a historic structure. It can be used on a new standalone structure. So how are we going to,
I could do a fenestration, kind of like more like almost like a picket, or I forget the technical term, but something of a traditional kind of wrapping around on the lower part so the siding doesn't have to go all the way to the bottom. And I guess that would also give a distinction between the existing and the new.
yeah. So, yes, I think the concern on the siding is we want an absolute distinction. Subtlety is nice, but it needs to be a distinction.
Sure.
This is a materials issue, so you could go with what you're referring to, or somehow we need to make sure this drawing indicates exactly what's happening in the limit, if we're gonna go that route. Okay, all right, those are my questions. Are there any other questions from the commissioners before we? Okay, so you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Jamie Nair, for the applicant. Just briefly, I just wanted to touch on the transportation code issues again. While we do see a lot of street parking, transportation code kind of assumes a suburban level of on-site parking. They require 2 parking spaces. We had multiple rounds of conversations with the transportation reviewer, scoured the site. The garage simply cannot be used. There's not enough room for parallel parking in the back, etc. The only way to have this code compliant site, transportation staff simply could not support this proposal. It would not be compliant with code if it didn't have 2 parking spaces on site. Natural resources staff also did review it. Grand trees are defined by code. However, I can't speak to which trees are or aren't going to be removed. That's more in the architect's purview, but I know that natural resources did review it and they know everything is compliant. Those are just my points.
So while you're up here, on your discussions with transportation, how far is that garage cottage setback from the alley?
Let me see, I think I have it here.
And it's really, how far is the setback from the property line?
So from,
On the left, it says 4.6, but, well, so it's 5.8 right there.
yeah,
Okay, so my understanding is transportation requires 16 feet. So is there a dimension on this alley?
it says 10 here.
Okay, so we're really 0.2 away from meeting the code? I guess this is the question for legal, since you had the conversation with transportation.
Transportation would not support the use of the garage to count it towards the 2 required parking spaces. So
I understand that.
that was, I mean,
guess-
whether if it was, I guess if it's 2 feet, I don't know the dimensions, that was the conversations that, the architect had. I understand, maybe logically speaking, 2 feet, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but transportation staff, absolutely not, can
Well,
count it.
not 2 feet. According to this, it's 0.2 of 1 feet.
Or-
Yeah, that's like
But
3 inches.
I don't know if that is the dimension, so I'm gonna
Okay.
defer to the, the
Okay.
people who took the measurements.
Good evening, Ron Vila, staff for Historic Preservation. I was in those conversations, and transportation looks for 24 feet for the backup, from the vehicular access to the end of the alley. You could use the alley dimension to back up. The alley's 10, this is about 5 foot in, so it's at 15. Transportation is looking for 24. The current condition of the parking on this site does not meet any transportation standards, so they cannot support what's out there currently there. For them to put in some parking in the back, that's for you all to discuss, but it'll eat up the majority of the backyard. When we looked at multiple solutions, this is one that met transportation standards at the time.
That's perfect. That's what I wanted to know. If it's 24, then,
Yeah.
got it. Okay. I interrupted your rebuttal. You have any other?
Thank you.
No, at this time, I'm okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to close the public portion of the hearing and move on to discussion. So I will start on my left.
Well, you heard my concerns with it, and I support expansion, extension, modernization of the home, but to do it at the cost of losing the frontage is concerning to me. And, pushing it to a point where it sets a precedent that is in the, I guess there is a struggle to reconcile competing demands, whether they be transportation or historic preservation, or which ones are more important. In this case, I don't think it's been demonstrated. We didn't see any of the other alternatives or any other options that were presented. This was the only one presented. So I would be of the thought that if there were other alternatives and other ways to approach it, it's worth exploring. If the notion here is historic preservation as a dominant driver, certainly for this commission, then taking every opportunity to explore how we can do that and preserve the continuity of the block and the practical aspects of the block. As we saw in that summary, there's 7 parcels, both on the north side and the south side, and there's only 4 existing cuts on one side and 3 on the other. So it's more prevailing that the rear entryways are the dominant use, and cutting one more portion of the block out, sacrificing the public use of it for one exclusive use, just seems inconsistent for me. I want to support owners who need to modernize their homes, but without seeing any other options of how the garage could be moved, or it could be modernized, or in other ways that the back access could be accommodated in some way, I just can't support it.
I tend to agree, that rear alley access and street parking are the predominant for this particular block. And historically, this house did not have any front driveway, curb cut. It was from the back. So historic preservation would kind of lead you to state that any renovation of this house would continue to utilize parking from the rear. Putting a curb cut in is pretty drastic, anywhere, and changing the historic, that's not what the historic pattern is. So I would tend to agree with that argument. I would like to see a set in of the addition from the facade of the house and not a continuation of the main facade of the historic house. Even with a vertical board is a little bit bothersome. I would like to see options on how you could park 2 cars off the street and what it would take and why it's impossible or why this is the only solution possible. We're not given that opportunity to see why this has to be done. I think it's a lack of information. I think there's possibility of continuation of this so that the property owner could present or the legal advisor could present actual evidence as to why this is the only solution.
Yeah, I'm certainly sympathetic to needing the roadway for others in the community, but it seems like if you don't give the access through the front, that a couple of things are gonna happen. One, they're gonna have to go through the back, and what I thought I heard maybe Ron say towards the end was, it's gonna cut into the backyard. So if you look at the plan to put 2 cars through the back, transportation clearly is not gonna allow them to do it with just this one. They're not gonna grant this back building to be counted as a parking space,
The existing
right?
shed.
Right, so you're gonna have to take it out and essentially run the driveway through the back. And I think what Ron was alluding to is that if you have it through the back way, a parking strip, it's gonna cut into the backyard.
I think there's alternatives.
All the
to
parking
that.
would have to be
Yeah.
from the alley. All parking would be
All it
through,
does.
into the backyard.
So how did the other
All
home,
parking.
yeah, so do the other homes have that, or did there were a number of homes that had parking through the front as well as
Right.
through the back.
Right.
So looking at this lot, it's how are you gonna accommodate that? And if you don't give them the front parking, is this house just gonna be parking in front of their house anyway, so that it's taking up the space that would be for the public would actually be used by this home? So are you really taking away one parking space that actually is gonna be used by this home by parking in front of their home by giving them a driveway? I mean, I kinda see it as one half dozen of the other, cause they're gonna park on the street
Well,
if they're not granted the additional.
They're welcome to, they do now, or everybody does, it's not, they're not
But
reserved spots or permanent
Many other
spots.
homes, from what I saw from Ron, had parking through the front.
So the
But
number is.
from 1920.
Yes.
Yeah, and
From,
the ones that
from
from the,
when.
It's a-
they-
it's
they're
the ones
his-
from the back seem to be the multifamily. So a lot of the one, I think,
In
if
some
I'm remembering
cases.
this correctly,
It's a mix.
that the ones that had multifamily were the ones that were parking through the back. That the single-family homes, there were some that were parking through the front.
Some were
So-
parking through the front historically, and
Right.
some were parking from the rear. There
So
were
I
some
would-
historic,
I think
single-family
most-
houses that had rear alley access only,
Yeah.
and
So
Ron went through
I
that.
surveyed it. I think your
Yeah.
points are valid.
Yeah.
And I just to make sure that the record reflects accurately, in this case, the glorified shed is a garage. It has a garage door on it. It's very small. It would have to be a very small vehicle to fit in there, not a contemporary one, but there is a garage there. It could be removed, it could be enlarged, it could be set back to be a more conventional garage. And right now, the fence, the rear-facing fence is set back from the alley by about 10 feet. So the cars are parallel parking back there. So they are parking in the rear access way. And I think and so that is taking up a portion of the backyard. So they're already experiencing that. I would welcome understanding what other options there are, configuration of the lot. It's a relatively large lot that would enable them to have, and not stackable, not a stacked driveway, but perhaps a larger two-car garage or some other configuration. Again, that's not our point to try to design it, but they are accommodating parking behind the home right now. And one other point to note is, in the survey that was shown, there's a home across the street that was shown as new construction. It's a large home. At the time that home came through for approvals, it had front access, and it actually was designed to push the access around to the rear. And they closed the front access, restored the granite curb, all again I don't know if it was this commission that made them do that. I wasn't
It was
party
part
to
of the
it.
ARC, yeah,
And
it was before I did, it was the
It's-
case that caused me to actually
It's the
join
notion,
the ARC.
it's the notion
Um,
of returning to that historic element.
And
to
they
your point,
accommodate parking in the rear.
And they accommodate in the rear.
Yeah, so I appreciate all these points. I think that they're gonna run into an issue with transportation, which is what I heard. And so if we
Fair.
wanna continue it so that they can go to transportation and say, what else can you help us with? Maybe transportation will help them out and allow them to count that back as it, but to me, it seems that there were enough properties that had the front driveway that it would, if you were driving down the street, you would see other front, driveways in front of homes. My bigger issue is more of the window over the pass-through, the pass-through window, and does it look,
So keep going with that. We've talked about the parking, so
Yeah,
keep going.
so the
with your-
pass-through window doesn't seem historically accurate. I mean, personally, I like it, I think it's a great entertainment function, but I don't know, and I welcome other thoughts of whether it really fits within the historic, of the home.
Single family or single hung windows, if you pull all four of them up, you have a pass-through window. If you had a gang of single hung windows, you could, essentially, they could serve the exact same function as those operable door kind of windows, in my opinion.
Okay. Commissioner Meyer?
I really have to concur with the concerns on the parking issue of my fellow commissioners. It's not that we are suggesting that at this point, that it needs to be one way or another, but we have not seen the possibilities that are acceptable. And it is an area that has lots of access from the rear, and those people have already been forced to, or for one reason or another, they already have a reduced backyard and they are managing. So it's not like we're asking something that is an impossibility here. And so I think that it is reasonable for us to ask for some additional information on that.
Okay, any concerns about the addition?
I think that that a vertical board is probably a better way. I think that the addition there needs to be some change in plane at that addition. I don't think it's an impossibility. There are a real variety. I think that the designer could make a case for his pass-through window partially by showing us the variety of windows it seems that there are right now. There are historic windows, there are windows that have been replaced over the years. There seems to be a real mixture of windows on this particular residence. But I think we need additional information.
I think the addition and how the addition gets treated as it approaches the ground, whether or not, it goes to the siding goes to the ground, whether or not it's held off, whether or not it's a screening material. I think there's just a whole bunch of answers that just still haven't been answered yet.
Okay.
Is that Would we kind of be in agreement of that, that there's more information needed?
Yes.
I understand where you guys are coming from. I frankly don't have a problem with the driveway. A 10-foot alley is not a wide alley, and there's a lot of traffic on that alley. So, but I would like to have more options, and I would like to have a more complete presentation, so I can understand that concept. With that being said, any other, are we looking for looks like we have a commissioner teeing up a,
I move to grant a continuance in the case of,
Don't they have, whoa, don't they have to, they have to ask.
I'll go
No.
first.
Yeah.
Ron has conferred with the applicant, and they are open to a continuance to bring you additional information. That being said, we do still have room on the October 7th, 2024 public hearing at 5:30 PM, so that would be
Okay.
an appropriate date. If they choose to extend that, then we can extend it at that time. Okay, that date seems to work for them.
okay. I move to grant a continuance in the case ARC 24-0000336 for the property at 1703 West Jatan Avenue to the October 7th, public hearing at 5:30 PM.
do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second. Any discussion?
Just one point for discussion, thank you for that, is just on the notion of the, give additional consideration for understanding that what's driving the front parking. It's not necessarily the transportation department's obligation to try to help or fix it. It's really more of a design issue, so I'd be looking to have some design options presented back that meet compliance with transportation's requirements. And to avoid a situation where the question is asked of transportation, what else can we do? And transportation says, we don't know anything. That, to me, that's not a sufficient vetting of it. It's really offering some design options that can be approved. Thanks.
Question for Ron. Was this garage a contributing structure, or is it a contributing structure?
It is non-contributing.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. The next agenda item is ARC-24-0000-368. This is for the address of 1905 North Florida Avenue. This is in the Tampa Heights Historic District. There's one structure there, it's non-contributing. It dates back to 1972. This site underwent a rezoning for a PD. The approximate square footage coming forward is just under 70,000 square foot. The request this evening is for a certificate of appropriateness for a 4-story commercial building with site improvements. The subject site has approximately 0.7 acres in size. It is bounded on 3 sides by streets, and one side there's an alley that runs along the east side. And as I stated, it contains one non-contributing building. Back in the end of 2023 in December, this board reviewed it. It went forward to City Council under 2 readings and received a positive recommendation for the PD or approval of the PD that was in front of them. Just to recap, on page 3 of your staff report, the application of standards, there's 11 bullet items there. Under tonight's review, the PD took care of so many of these bullet items here. The scale, the height, and the width was established under the PD. The massing and building form was established under the PD. The setbacks, orientation and site coverage, and alignment, rhythm, and spacing. The footprint of the PD is slightly altered of what you're gonna see. They do have the entitlements. The PD was larger than what they're showing today. It has been reviewed at a preliminary state, and this project can move forward as presented this evening. So moving forward, the items that can be reviewed or are outstanding are the materials within the district, the trim and details that link between the old and the new, the facade proportions and window patterns, the entrance and porch projections, the roof forms, and maintain quality within the district. I'm going to go through the photo presentation. This is the 1929 Sanborn map. Property in question is highlighted in the green. You have Florida Avenue to the west. You have Palm on the south. You have Ross to the north, and there is an alley that runs east and west that butts into the subject site, and one that runs north and south just to the east. So you get an understanding of exactly where this is in the overall district of Tampa Heights. The red indicates the local district, and it's is more contained in the southwest portion. This is a current day aerial. Once again, you have Palm to the south, you have Florida Avenue to the west, you have Ross to the north, the subject site showing the non-contributing structure. Looking back at the site, you have currently there's a parking area for the YMCA that's across the street to the west. You have Florida Avenue and Palm. Just getting a little closer to the subject site. This is a non-contributing structure. As you go down Florida Avenue to the north, and if you continue down Florida to the north, the apex of Ross and Florida, you have an empty parcel that completes the block. Going back to the subject site, this is Palm Avenue, this is the parking, non-contributing, and then you have Florida Avenue to the west. As you continue to the east, this is Palm Avenue, this is new construction on the other side of the alley. Looking down Palm Avenue, this is to the east. Turning around, looking at Palm, down to the west, subject site is over here. The current YMCA in the background, that will be removed eventually. To the south, you have a church. As I stated, this is the YMCA. That's at the corner of Palm and Florida Avenue on the west side. Looking down Florida Avenue, subject site is over here, current YMCA, Florida Avenue, and turning around, looking at Florida Avenue to the south. That concludes the photo presentation. The booth asked me to have the commissioners please speak into your mics. They were having a tough time picking you guys up. Thank you very much. At this time, the design team can come forward.
Good evening, Matt Mitchell, the President and CEO of the Tampa Metropolitan Area YMCA, 110 East Oak Avenue. Thank you for your time tonight. We're really excited about sharing our plans for this new Tampa Heights YMCA with you all. As you know, the YMCA is not new to Tampa. We've had a strong presence in this community for 135 years. You know, early on, back in 1889, I think the staff were very programmatic at working out of whatever space was available to them at that time. But in 1908, we opened up our very first dedicated facility in this city, which is just a few blocks from here on the corner of Zach Avenue and Florida Avenue. That YMCA brought to this city its very first indoor gymnasium, its very first indoor pool, and served this community for decades and decades and decades. And the same is true in Tampa Heights. You know, we've had a strong presence in Tampa Heights. You know, this past June, we celebrated 30 years of the Tampa Heights YMCA in that community. We're very proud of everything that YMCA has accomplished as far as impact for our neighbors and for our kids and families. But that Y was built at a different time for a different purpose, and now we have this tremendous opportunity to evolve. And when we build a new YMCA, we don't stick to one certain architectural type. You know, we have a saying in the YMCA, if you've seen one YMCA, you've seen one YMCA, because every Y is so different. It really reflects the immediate needs of the local communities. Our YMCA in Carrollwood is much more different than our YMCA in Gibsonton, and our YMCA in Plant City is much more different than in Town and Country. We really try to fit the mold of whatever the local community needs. And this YMCA in Tampa Heights is no different. The scope of this YMCA has been put together by conversations with hundreds and hundreds of local members who live in the community, of neighbors, of adjacent small business owners. And these conversations were conducted through civic presentations and open houses and surveys where we really got feedback from our local partners. And I have to say that I'm not certain I've ever built a YMCA before that reflects so much community input as this one does. And that's a good thing. Now, we changed a lot of things due to community feedback, and this is a much better YMCA because of it. Now I'm going to ask our architects, Marcel Maslowski and Saul Fleischman from FGM Architects, to go through and explain the details of this plan.
Thank you. My name is Marcel Maslowski, project architect. I'll show on the screen. Put it up here.
You got it?
Yeah. No. Laptop. This one.
That it?
This one, yeah.
You want to put it up there?
Yeah, you can show on the screen.
He said try to unplug it and plug it back in, because I'm there and it's working properly.
Turn it on and off.
Okay. Shows on that screen.
Try it one more time.
Well, I have it on the PC also. We can do it on PC then. PC here. Okay. Okay. Should be fun. Okay, so I guess I'll have to scroll through. Several of the images are smaller, so I'll zoom in and out. So, good evening. So I'll talk first. I want to show the zoning PD. Now all the plans are oriented north, facing the right side because of the rectilinear nature of the plan. So Florida Avenue that runs north-south is on the top here. Palm Avenue is on the left and Ross Avenue on the right. So Matt mentioned that, met with the community and heard the feedback. So there'll be some changes from the original plans that shrinks the building and also on the site. In terms of setback, along Palm Avenue, we have a 2-foot setback, a minimum. Along Florida Avenue, 10-foot setback, but also 12-foot sidewalk requirements to respect. And then along Ross Avenue, a 0-foot setback. And there's a setback of 10 feet from the alleyway. Now, I want to mention the alley only goes about halfway through, and after that, the rest of the alley was vacated, and the townhomes are located right here. The existing buildings and surface parking will be demolished as part of this project. So here is the current proposed site plan. So we're respecting the setbacks along Palm Avenue and the sidewalk requirements along Florida Avenue. And we're 12 foot away from the alleyway here. Along Ross Avenue, we actually pushed the building back, so the pool deck was able to come down on the ground floor. Along Palm and Florida Avenue, we still want to have there as the main entry, so this is set back from that corner to create a sense of entry and define that entry. Along Palm Avenue and Florida Avenue, we have recesses into the building so we can provide landscape to soften the edge of the building. And that actually carries all around. Even around the pool deck, we have a wall that's 6 foot high that you'll see on the elevation and the renderings. That's set back so you can have also a landscape along here. There is an existing tree that's to remain outside of the property line. And see, in terms of the ground floor, I mentioned the main entry along that corner here. We wanted to celebrate that, and you'll see that on the architecture. So we push it back. This will be all glass, transparent, to invite the community in. There's a lobby reception, so you check in and you're able to move up through the stairs or to the elevator. Facing Palm Avenue, the kids area has storefronts. And then the multi-purpose room on Florida Avenue also have storefront facing there. So the locker rooms are set back here, accessible from the pool. The second level actually comes out to this dash line here. So it goes over the smaller pool here, and the larger lap pool is open to the sky. And going up to the roof, so what you'll see is that level 4 actually has a roof deck area, where you see that pattern, which doesn't really show on the screen. Here, level 4 is where we're going to place the mechanical units, so we'll screen them as well. And they're placed in the center of the building, away from the edges. Level 4 has smaller air-conditioned space, where you'll have flat roofs, so we can respect the 60-foot maximum level, and there's a trellis that faces Florida Avenue here. So the elevations, what we wanted to create here is, respect the character of Tampa Heights by using the brick. We also wanted to break up the facade, so even though, along Florida Avenue, it shrunk away from Ross Avenue, it's still a very long facade, so we wanted to break it based on the massing based on what's happening inside the building. So first, vertically on the right side, I don't know if you can see my mouse. This is where we have the recess back, and this is the main entry. This third level comes out cantilevers above, so it creates a covered area to create that entry porch. The entry is 2 stories, so we want to celebrate that with a lot of glass, transparency. And then first vertically, we break up the facade with moments where we have stairs inside the building. You're seeing the middle and on the left side. And horizontally, we also break up the facade with storefronts on the first level that has reference to historic storefronts. We also have the brick recesses that helps us to define that first level. And as you go up, second and third level has this window pattern inspired by the reference of Tampa Heights historic buildings, where you have a larger and a smaller window pattern to create that facade, and then on the fourth level to create almost like a penthouse feel with that change in material here. And we carried that same language around the south side of the building with that same level on the top here. This actually recesses back a little bit, so you have a patio here. There is the storefront on the first level, the same brick pattern, and then the second and third level have the same window pattern here. On the north side, we have a bit more windows. This is the part that's pushed back. The windows on the second and third level faces the pool below. The first level actually recesses back where there's that covered pool area. On the right side, want to break up the facade on that corner by expressing the stairs. And that same brick recess pattern, define again the bottom level here. This is a view set of further back, so you can see the wall along the property line, where I should set back from the property line a couple of feet, but want to carry that same language with the brick. It's a 6-foot high brick wall, so that provides privacy inside of the pool deck area, and a rolling gate to provide access for service. Now, rolling gate is intended to be, has a solid metal panel so that it hides for privacy. This is a east facade. So you notice on the second and third level, this is actually facing closer to the townhome, so the window is actually set higher, so you're not directly looking down, but you still have natural light going into the building. On the left side here, we're carrying the same language of the windows around the corner, and the penthouse wraps down so that it breaks up the facade here on the east side. In terms of section, a couple of things I want to highlight is as we go around the building, especially facing Palm Avenue and Florida Avenue, we wanted to have those recess moments so that we can introduce greenery to soften the edge. Also provides a little bit more depth onto the sidewalk. And as you transition to the upper level, you have a corbel brick detail that creates that transition you're seeing here. And also at the main entry, we're seeing that transition happening higher. And then the window patterns here, where we have, the intention is to have windows with muntins to create the same pattern reference to historical windows, and have a window surround. But instead of a brick surround like you see in Tampa Heights, we're using a metal surround to reframe the windows. And you see on the top level, again, recessing back to create that depth on the facade you're seeing here. This section, same thing. This is a section of the stairs. The left section is at the main entry where you're seeing this third and fourth level coming out, creating a covered entry. We did add a smaller canopy here just to define where the entry doors are with a sign above it. The second section is the south side, south wall along Palm Avenue. So you're seeing again that recess on the first level with that corbel detail creating that transition to the second and third level. You're seeing the same window detailing. And then the top level pushes back a little further so we can have a small exterior space there. This third section here is on the east side, so you're seeing the higher windows so that you're not directly looking down into the neighbors. And then the deck area on the fourth level here. So here's a rendering. The colors are very bright on there. So the rendering shows the corner of Palm Avenue on the right and Florida Avenue. This shows the main entry it recesses back and creates that sense of entry. More transparency in that two-story space. So it's very open, transparent. We want to use as transparent as possible on the glass. Using the storefront system with the recess and the landscape, each one of those recesses. Same thing along Palm Avenue, using the window pattern on the brick facade, and then you're seeing how the facade is broken up by those moments where we breaking up the massing of the building. So here's a view on the northwest corner along Florida Avenue, where you're seeing again the recesses, the window pattern. And as you turn around the corner, you have this stair tower that breaks up the facade, but also the window pattern on the left side here, facing the pool deck area behind this wall. So here's a view along Palm Avenue. Another thing that we want to show is what happens in the evening with this rendering. So along the main facade, we have wall-mounted lights with up and down to accentuate the brick work. And the window pattern wraps around the corner here. You see on the second and third level. That tall element here is the stairs, the fire stairs, and then on the right you're seeing the section with the upper windows. On the roof deck, I'll show the actual light, but we intend to use a light as a light shield that pushes the light onto the deck, so it doesn't go. You don't have as much light pollution onto the exterior to your neighbors. Here's a view from the northeast corner from Ross Avenue, where you see that window pattern here carries on the side. Difference is the higher window. One thing on those is that we have a brick accent pattern that we're introducing inside the frames here, just to break up the facade along the east side and the north side. All right, this should be fun. This is all over the place. The first image here is the main brick pattern. So it's a wire cut brick, full range, so that you get from the terracotta color to the darker brick. I did bring a sample just because it's always hard to see on the pictures, but just showing the full range, following the surface of the brick as well. Okay. Thank you. So that would be along all the facades. Along the north and east side is where we want to introduce just a different pattern, just to break up the facade. It's a little bit more solid, especially on the east side, where we turn the end of the brick to create the shadow effect on the facade. The entry doors will be glass doors. We intend to have on the frame dark anodized color with long pulls at the doors that would have the bronze color. And mentioned the black anodized and the black trim detail that you're seeing around the windows, the storefronts will be similar to this. The muntins that we use on the windows as well. In terms of glass, we want to use the glass that has the most transparency. That's something that's beautiful about Tampa Heights historic buildings. LB impacts insulated windows, but with a clear coating. Here's the lights that will be along the pillars along the main facade. Has up and down lights. This would be the other lights, more utilitarian, so they become a little bit longer on the east side. The sign we intend to have more of a bronze finish on it, as you saw in the renderings. The soffit, as you enter, has a wood soffit, so we intend to use a thermally modified wood products that we've used before that gives you real woods that's moisture and UV resistance. This is a picture of what's intended for the rolling gates, which is a very small area. Here's the lights that we propose on the roof deck, which has actually a shield that pushes the lights onto the deck itself. Here's what we're proposing for the picket railing that you see on the fourth level. You do want to note that the actual spec didn't have the picture with the black anodized color, so but it's the same material, just different color. The roof screen that we're showing, we have also the same dark color. But that would be along the mechanical screen. You technically wouldn't see too much of it from the ground floor, but so you want a screen around the roof deck as well. The top level will be a multi-ply roofing system. The roof deck will have a lockdown system above the roofing. We intend to use the same pavers on the roof deck as around the pool deck with a light color 2x2 paver. The trellis would be a custom built trellis with using aluminum metal. We do have one overhead door, which would be the same color finish. And for any of the mechanical louvers that we need, we'll have wind-driven horizontal system, and then the bike rack. We just wanted to keep something simple since on the front of the building. There is a wall mock-up that actually the contractor built on site, so if you ever want to go drive on site, you'll be able to see it. But it shows the window, the metal detail, and then the brick along it. So we just Photoshop it so you don't see all the stuff around, but that is on site right now. One thing I touched on is the landscape. So showing landscape, each one of those recesses, smaller trees at the entry here to soften that entry, and then that's landscape kind of carries around, and then trees along the east side, as you saw in the renderings. So we're running short on time, so next I'll have Saul talk about the historical references. Oops. I'll just slide through for you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, ARC. Saul J. Fleischman Jr., 324 Hyde Park Avenue. I have been sworn in. I'm going to talk about the compatibility of our building in the historic district, talking about scale, materials, and quality. Let's go to backwards. That's the last one. Thank you. The first project we want to show you is our Tampa Heights Elementary School, a school that Fleischman Garcia Maslowski renovated. It's at 305 East Columbus Drive. It's a 3-story building of brick and has windows with muttons like we're planning, and it has varied roof forms. The next project is the Tampa Heights Methodist Church, which is at the corner of Central and Ross Avenues. Let's go to the next one. This is the rear of the Tampa Heights Methodist Church, where it's, of course, it's a brick building. We'll talk about the windows in a second. It's got projecting features around the windows. It's mullions with various size glass panes. It's got horizontality in the detail. Go to the next one. Okay. You can see the upper story has windows without soldier coursing or without cast stone. Very simple, which we've emulated in our design. The lower windows have frames, which we've emulated in our metal frames as opposed to brick. Next. This is the old Rodolph Sholem Synagogue, which was at 309 Palm Avenue, a building I grew up in, went to Sunday school, and it was an iconic brick building, approximately 3 stories in height, with metal domes on it, which is rare in the historic district. Next. We'll pass over this one. Go ahead. Go on up one more. Right. Okay. This is the old Tampa Heights Hospital, which is at the corner of 7th Avenue in Morgan. I was born in this hospital, and it was truly an iconic building in the district. Brick, naturally, 4.5 stories, half stories below the ground. Varied roof heights, flat roof with parapets, varied window patterns, horizontal banding, and it was sited right up to the sidewalk. Let's go to the next one. Notice this shows the 4th story not all the way to Morgan. The next one shows when it was modernized, it was stuccoed over, and additional additions were done. Go to the next one. There, thank you. This showed 2 additions and a 3rd addition under construction. Couldn't find any photos of the total building, but iconic building in the historic district with large massing, large windows, windows with mullions, horizontal banding, all references we took for our building. Let me talk a little bit about design of compatible new construction in the historic district. And this, I'm going to read some sentences from your guidelines, which are pertinent to our creative, unique design. Under the introduction, in the first paragraph, creative solutions reflecting current architectural design theory and practice are encouraged in the design of new construction in the historic district. The focus of design guidelines is on the compatibility of new construction with the existing character of the neighborhood without dictating style. New construction is encouraged to be unique in design while reflecting the basic scale, materials, and quality found in the early buildings in Tampa Heights. Replicating styles from the past does not allow creativity and integrity of expression of the present and should not be confused with compatible design. The new Tampa Heights YMCA will be a compatible, unique, and quality gateway to the Tampa Heights Historic District. That concludes our presentation, and we look forward to your questions.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Veal, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Moving forward, I'd like to bring to your attention, there's a letter that was submitted into the record. It's in everybody's packet moving forward. I'd like for you to focus on the standards that are remaining as the introduction to this case. On page 3, I talked about the application of standards. So scale, massing, setback orientation, alignment have been discussed through the PD. I don't think it's completely foreign if it works its way into the presentation, but the focus should be on the remaining 6 application of standards. This project, when reviewed on August 21st, 2024, we had some conditions attached to it. This was a complete presentation that came forward. They addressed all of the bullet items. Staff signed that this application is consistent with the Tampa Heights Design Guidelines. I'm here to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Ron. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak for or against this project? All right, sir, if you'll come up, state your name and your address. Have you been sworn?
I have been sworn, yes.
Thank you.
We have one more letter that you're going to get an additional minute.
Yes.
Is that here? Can I get that? So Mr. Grunke has submitted into the record a waiver form here. The gentleman is present. So for each waiver form that is submitted, the speaker will get 1 additional minute. So we're going to give him 4 minutes to speak this evening.
Perfect, thank you.
My name is Roger Gurunka. I'm an architect, preservation architect. I'm a member of the Tampa Heights Land Use Committee. And I've been asked to read our letter from the Tampa Heights Civic Association. Dear Commissioners, the Tampa Heights Civic Association Executive Board reviewed the application and associated plans for ARC 24368, the YMCA's new Tampa Heights facility. We have a number of questions and comments about the design, which are noted in the attached plan set. Tampa Heights Civic Association will support the Certificate of Appropriateness application if the questions are answered and the requested design changes are made. If such things are not done, the Tampa Heights Civic Association encourages a continuance to a future meeting date to allow time for appropriate design changes. We learned about the application through the 30-day public notice, and were not extended the opportunity to work with the YMCA on these designs prior to that time. As stewards of the Tampa Heights Neighborhood Plan, Tampa Heights Historic District, and Tampa Heights Overlay District, we want to ensure all new development, especially large-scale development, is consistent with those guideline documents. We value the YMCA's long presence and service in Tampa Heights. We look forward to their next chapter in the neighborhood and believe that with some reasonable design changes, This structure will add to the character of historic Tampa Heights. As I say, that's from the executive board of the association. So we have approximately 3 areas. The first is fenestration. I agree with what Mr. Fleischman showed everybody on the historic precedent examples. And if you noticed those examples, as well as, how do we get this going here? As well as this is historic Tampa. Fenestration is, the character of the fenestration is vertical, and it is symmetrical. And in that respect, we feel that this particular application is missing the guidelines. Here's a modern building, and I'm not saying I like the building. I'm just saying that from a fenestration standpoint, it does follow the guidelines. This is a modern building, and the fenestration is symmetrical and vertical. So let's take the application, the applicant's design here. Let's see, move it, okay. And let's do a simple overlay onto this. I have shown here, let's see, do I have that? Yeah. Okay, so I have shown here in green, I've outlined with green those symmetrical windows, and the orange, the non-complying asymmetrical windows that are more typical of mid-century modern than of the turn-of-the-century historic district in Tampa Heights. I told Mr. Fleischman a couple of weeks ago, I thought this was a lovely building. I still sincerely believe it's a lovely building, but this aspect of it does not fit our neighborhood, and we are obligated. It is a historic district, and fenestration is one of the key points. Well, I'm out of time. We had 2 other areas of concern, but I think you get my message. We'd be happy to work with the applicant to help them along with some of these problems, but we do believe that they need to be addressed. Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak for or against the project? All right, seeing no one, we will move on to questions from the commissioners, starting with my left.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I'm familiar with the project. It's a very exciting project, and I think there's a lot of opportunity that you've laid out in terms of the building itself. I think just relative to the comments made by the Civic Association, could you just comment on, first of all, my understanding is there's been a lot of outreach around the community concerning this building, and was this group just overlooked? I think just for the record, maybe reflect on what communication there's been, and if you have a comment on what their responses have been, or what their issues have been.
Yeah, so, I want to start.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we had a very different design originally, and after all the feedback, we changed the design to observe that. We did receive those comments, and we try to incorporate the comments that we felt we agreed with. Some of them we're taking away from the creativity parts, I think, of the project. That's taking away from the guidelines, but we wanted to make sure that we respect the character of Tampa Heights Historic District. So we have the material, we have the window patterns of large to small is something that's been done in Tampa Heights. They want to look at buildings from outside of Tampa Heights. What he's talking about is from level 2 to 3, where to break up more the massing and to create more interest in the facade, we inverted that pattern. So this is where that created activity parts for us was important to create something that's unique, but at the same time responds to the character of Tampa Heights. But we've met with them. We also met last week, again, to go through those comments. You know, there's a lot of comments that we incorporated, and some of them we did not. But
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
So did you see the what was submitted by the association
Yeah.
and their comments?
Yes.
All these plans and?
Yep.
So it looks like some of these are with respect to, some of the comments are with respect to landscaping. So did you address those? It looks like one was landscaping around the pool, landscaping in front. So is the landscaping that you showed in your renderings, was that added after your
Yes, correct.
conversation with them?
yes, correct.
Okay, and then in this letter by the association, there is one thing about dumpsters. There's a question, are these permanent dumpsters? So can you speak to that?
Yeah, they're not permanent. What was approved in PD zoning was to roll them out to get picked up on Ross Avenue. So that's
And
what
then
we're
roll
showing.
back
Roll
in.
back in.
Because the side that they're on, that's where the, there's some residents there, or there's a condo there or something right next, on Ross, is that right or not?
No, there's townhomes next to it.
Townhomes,
Which
okay.
they also take out the trash along Ross Avenue. But
Okay.
right now what's approved in the PD zoning was to take out the trash there and it rolls back in.
Okay, so it's not like those townhome owners are gonna have these dumpsters
No, you know.
out there all the time, okay. Let me just look through and see what else they had. And then what was, I think you already answered this, but with respect to the windows and the symmetry, I think I heard the answer was, it was creatively, that's where we got into the creative side of it, of having these different sized windows throughout the side of the,
Yeah, the actual size and proportion are respectful of Tampa Heights, historic buildings. Where we switch is from level 2 to 3. You notice we just switch the large and the small to create more rhythm on the facade. So that's what the switch is.
okay. And then were there any concerns regarding the lighting and the townhomes? I noticed on that side of the building, if I think I'm getting this correct, that's where the windows are
Yes,
higher
correct.
up?
Exactly.
And is there gonna be any overfill or overspill of light from the upper deck? I guess that, is there, what's up there that those lights are?
Yeah, so the level 4 roof deck, so we selected those lights that have a light shield, so it actually directs the lights onto the deck
Okay.
instead of your typical lights that would just spread evenly along there.
Has there been discussion with the townhome specifically regarding the light and how to deal with that, or was that not really, did that not really come up?
I know there was some concern, but it's not much.
Matt Mitchell again, still sworn. There was tons of conversation with the neighbors, and what's reflected on the rooftop now is direct feedback from them. Originally, the pool was up there and pickleball courts, and they'd say, hey, look, this is our sanctuary, pickleball's kind of loud, and how that all affect our, our privacy. Hence, the windows being further up, so there's not someone looking into somebody's living room. It was all very much a purposeful decision to do it the way we did it.
Okay, and the pool coming down, so the sound was ground level, and, okay. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
Could you put up the northwest corner of Florida Ross with the stereo?
How do I go back? Northwest, right here.
Yes. And there's a patterning on those, the dark walls set back from the brick. And what is the material on that?
Those are metal to create, to to create the look of columns and beams and then details there to break up that.
And the general wall material is what?
That would be concretes itself and then plaster, painted.
Okay, so it's stucco.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And there is no possibility for, why is the fenestration there? Those are, it's the turning of the stairs, is that?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, you essentially have the landing about here. Same here.
And you've cantilevered that corner. It looks a little uneasy there. I'm sure that was a design decision to provide a little unease to the passerby.
Yeah, I think on this side, we wanted to push it back a little bit more so that you have a little bit more room on the sidewalk.
And I'm having difficulty figuring out what the function there. There's no planting there, so the planter doesn't exist at that.
Yeah, we just break it up. So here you have a planter, and then it picks back up here, just to give a variation, instead of having the same planter going all the way across.
And the glazing is all the same? Is that? Did I hear that correctly? Did you change the glazing? I guess the question is the glazing at the front entrance, at the opposite end of the building, is different, or that's just a lighting thing that you put into the rendering?
Oh, yeah, rendering. Yeah, it would be all the same glass glazing material.
And you said that you wanted that to be very clear. Is that?
Yes, correct.
Okay, but it's not looking very clear there.
It's just a reflection from the angle that's creating that. But the intent is actually the same as we use at Tampa Heights, which is very transparent.
All right, no further questions. Thank you.
Hi. I'm just going to go back and look at a couple of the comments from the association, from the Tampa Heights Association. And they did bring up the fact that the continuing of tree-lined streets was important to them. And they presented in their letter I guess, an early version of the site plan or a site plan that they were provided, which shows rows of streets, rows of trees rather, on three sides of the property. And I'm wondering if, you could stick that, go back to that rendering you just showed. You see, you have the trees shown continuous down the street to the right-hand side of this rendering, and then it stops on your property line. And then it continues over on the very left side of the rendering and continues down the street, but it stops on your property line. That's important to the association, is to have some continuous trees along the street lines. Have you, given the maximum amount of effort to squeeze some, even if they're, thin vertical trees, but something to provide a continuous pattern of foliage down the street and not just at low landscape boxes at street level?
So I'll talk about the right
Scott Gilner with Kinley Horn Associates, with civil engineer on the project. So when we're looking at this, we have to actually take into account what FDOT is going to do as well. So as we're going through the permitting process, right now we want to do the same thing. We want to do the tree-lined street. However, we can't promise we can do that with all the FDOT utilities and the roadway work that's coming for the streetcar. So we didn't want to show it and then not be able to do it. But our intent is, as long as we can get it okayed by FDOT, we plan on doing it.
And so, and you would accommodate us placing that as a condition of our recommendation
Yes,
today?
of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think,
Okay.
but the condition has to be that
That-
if
but
DOT allows us, 'cause otherwise-
No, you're just gonna run right over FDOT.
That doesn't work well.
No, it doesn't work that way, I know.
Yep, thank you.
The only other real comment I had is that, and I think it's really, really critical, and I understand the light cutoffs on the rooftop and all that kind of stuff and having shields, but there are, I guess you could say there are some seriously absolute zero cutoff fixtures that you can get, and not just with shields, and completely dark sky compliant fixtures that you can get where the optics of the fixture themselves won't allow light to spill over, regardless of shields or anything else like that. And I think it's critical to your next door neighbors that those fixtures have absolutely zero spill off of your property line onto the adjacent. I've lived next to sports facilities, put it that way. You can't sleep at night if the lights are on that sports facility at all, because your entire house is glowing, even if it's a 3% spill. The lighting is just into your house. Yeah, I had to get blackout curtains and everything else like that. So I'm going to insist upon that as being a condition also, that it be completely zero cutoff and dark sky compliant fixtures on the roof.
Yeah, we'll do a photometric study as part of, the construction documents as we select the lights, location, property.
Right.
But yes.
Okay. Those are the only two comments I have.
Okay. Could you show the east elevation, the rendering that shows the east? So the concrete panelized facade, what was the neighborhood? You said this was not the first approach. So is there any concern about that amount of solid wall?
So this was all solid originally. We didn't have any of those windows.
Okay.
So this part here is the fire stairs. So that's what we have as solid. But where we can, we're putting windows to provide, to be more friendly elevation there.
Okay. So I understand how design works, and these drawings are all kind of being updated. You're showing on this perspective, you're showing that wall on the street set in, but I want to say your site plan shows that fence and wall a little bit closer to the sidewalk. Which one is the most accurate?
We updated the site plan to push this back here. You're talking about the fence wall?
Yes.
Yeah, we pushed it back. That was one of the comments actually from the Tampa Land Use Committee, to push it back and have a tree in front of it. So we did do that in the latest site plan that's today.
Okay, and then the site plan that the Civic Association uses, I think, is older as well, because it shows a
Yes.
very staggered east elevation from a fence line, and yours renderings show it straight. Okay.
Yep.
All right, that makes sense. So I understand the symmetry, and I understand the concept of creating a little bit more interest. Did you do a design that had all the windows symmetrical?
Yes, we did. Yeah, that's what the original intent was, to have all of them the same, and it just became, it feels the massing looks larger by doing that. So
Okay.
by alternating the window, it breaks up the scale of the building further, which is
Okay.
what we're trying to do.
So same question related to the actual windows themselves. I believe you have two facades, maybe it's three, where the windows are recessed, but then you have windows that are protruding. Am I right about that?
They're all recessed, yeah.
Okay, so
They're
then you just
different
have,
levels of recess.
okay, but then you have detailing that's protruding
Yes.
out of some windows.
The frame is protruding.
Okay, so functional reason, pure creative aesthetic, and you looked at it multiple ways?
Yeah, we looked without them. What we liked about it is how it frames the windows and create a shadow line
Okay.
along the bottom. So that's what we're trying to create there
Okay.
on the
All right.
edges.
On the very north property line, there's an existing right-of-way tree. I saw one plan that looked like it might not be there, but then I saw something else that it's gonna remain?
Yes, and per the PD zoning, it's going to remain too.
It's
That's what's
going to
shown in the
remain,
PD zoning.
okay. The solid brick wall around the pool, I'm assuming it is 100% solid and opaque, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Did you at all look at taking a portion, maybe you know, from 4 feet up and having it be slightly open?
So, and Matt can also speak to that, but I think this was based on community feedback.
Yeah, Matt Mitchell still sworn. They, feedback was that they wanted the separation from pool activity and normal residential life across the street, and so kind
So
of.
noise, they didn't, okay.
Yeah, matter of fact, we'd probably even want to make it 10 feet if we could,
Okay.
to create, you know, harmony of both people who are using it and those who are not outside of the pool.
Gotcha. So to that in mind, I look at your landscape plan, and obviously you have very limited amount of landscape area. And on that east side, you've got cypress trees, which will be a good selection. Did you look at planting them closer together? There's a way to make this 100% opaque
On the east side?
on the east side. You still have residential on the east side, right?
Yes, on the northern parts, just gonna go to the site landscape plan.
I don't know what the spacing is between those trees. Is the intent for those to grow tip to tip, or can you tighten them up and make them?
Potentially, I'm not sure, you know, it'd be a while before, you know, they take off and create that's, you know, as I'm not a landscape architect to speak to that, but, you know, the wall will provide you a day one, you know, solution.
I'm just asking the question,
Yeah.
if the concern is, you know, quality of life
Yeah,
and separating the pool activity from that, there is a solution to kind of get it a little bit more recent, just asking the question. Okay. All right, I think that's it for questions for me. Any other comments from the Civic Association that you wanted, that you did not take into account? Or, let me back up. You said you took them all into account, but you didn't choose to pursue some of them.
the other two were the protruding, detail, which, we had a all different, opinion, because we do see protruding details around. Saul showed a couple of examples, not metal, but necessarily. The other one where, since we have the surround express, you know, we don't need a brick lintel at the top, which I think that was one of the other comments too.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Those are my questions. Any other follow-up questions from commissioners? No?
I have
Oh,
one.
go ahead.
Can we see, you took some pictures of, down the road. Can we just see those one more time? I think you had 3 or 4 of them. Okay.
So that's Florida Avenue to the north. And then going back to Palm. Septic site is over here. This is the intersection of Florida Avenue and Palm. That's to the west. And this is Palm Avenue. Septic site would be over here. And that's looking to the east.
Can you just go back one, the last one, I just want to see. Okay.
You have a question?
No, I was just looking at the newer building beyond the church,
Gotcha.
what that looked like.
So while we have those up, the width of the existing sidewalks as they are and the proposed width.
The proposed, sorry, the existing, I can't speak to that, so I think we're about 7.5 foot to the columns, and then after that you have that recess, another 2 feet to the storefronts, where we have the little landscape bed.
So that's on the south and the west side?
The south side.
South side,
The-
7.5,
the
okay.
Florida Avenue, existing, I'm not sure, but new, it would be 12 feet plus that recess for the landscape.
So the west side is 12 feet.
Yes,
Okay. Where's the bike rack? Is that the front door?
at the front door, yes.
I didn't pick up on it okay, now I see it. How many bikes is that supposed to hold?
I think, oh, sorry. I'll just look up here.
Here's where I'm going with this.
Mhm.
Are you expecting everybody to drive here? Is that what happens with the current YMCA? How much of this is walkable and rideable from a community standpoint?
Oh, you want to speak to?
Yeah, Matt Mitchell, still sworn. We expect a lot more pedestrian traffic and bike riding traffic and e-bikes and things of that nature coming to this Y than we currently do.
Okay, so my question is, how many bikes are supposed to be there? What's
So
the
right now-
maximum capacity?
So we're showing about 5, so it'll be 10 bikes, and then the rest will be, with the parking, is going to be across Ford Avenue.
Okay. I'm not positive how realistic that is. If it's going to be as walkable as you want it to be, and as these communities are coming, 7.5 feet is not a wide sidewalk. Have you investigated, what can you do to make the south sidewalk wider?
So, good.
Scott Gilner again with Kimley Horn Associates. So as we're looking at this, we're meeting the setbacks that we have within the PD zoning. I think it ranges from 2 feet on the south to, I think, 3.4. So we've actually slid that back in some renditions to get a little bit more space in there. So it might be somewhere between 7.5, 8, 8.5 feet as we get there from edge of roadway to sidewalk. So that sidewalk's gonna be roughly, I'll call it 8 feet. The other one's gonna be 12. It's probably 3+ feet larger than it is today.
Okay. I'll give you that, and that's better than nothing, but again, when you have a lot of traffic, 8 feet gets tight, especially when you're traveling against a very busy road, especially if it's a parent with a child who might be riding a bike. 8 feet is not wide. So again, goes back to that question, have you looked at how you can make it a 10-foot sidewalk?
So this is why,
So if we did it on that side, you have a pretty narrow lot. You've got a 10-foot sidewalk going to nowhere at the next spot. So
Are you talking about the south side?
south side.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already have 12
Yeah, right.
projected. So I think when we're looking at, when we go to the next block over to the west, you know, as we kind of go into the development, that's even wider because that's where the streetcar transit stops plan to be on the north side of Palm.
Okay. So you're not
So
expecting?
it's really probably more going west than it is functionally going east. That
Okay.
makes sense.
Fair enough. Okay. Any other questions? All right, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
I don't know what to rebuttal.
You don't have to use it if you don't want.
Saul Fleischman again, I've been sworn. I talked about being unique, I talked about being creative right out of your guidelines. We don't want this thing to look like a cigar factory with window, 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 window. We think we have a creative solution that relates to the historic architecture of Tampa Heights. We think it's going to be an iconic building that we're all going to be very, very proud of. We're going to continue to refine it. And of course, Ron and Dennis and Elaine will have another shot at it when we deliver the construction documents to make sure that we followed the intent, but we've made it even better. So we urge you to approve it and let us go forward on this very special project, which is going to break my heart because I designed 30-something years ago the existing Bob Gilbertson Central City YMCA, which will be coming down. But life moves on and progress, and we're very, very proud of this design, and we hope you are too. Thank you so much.
Matt Mitchell, I want to make sure that we're not discounting all of the community feedback that we received and implemented into this project. And we took all the feedback and did so many things that we incorporated from the community talking to us into this project. Where we stopped doing it consistently was at architectural opinion. And we hired architects that know the guidelines, and they designed, what inspired the design of this building is the guidelines for the Tampa Heights Historic District. And, this is a 170-foot long building, and, the uniformity just, we think it loses character when we follow that. Architectural opinion, I felt that we hired the best that there was, and we get that there's other opinions, but we prefer and we favor the opinions of our architects, which, as stated by the city, that falls in line with the guidelines, and it's consistent with that. And again, saying that with the most due respect, because the YMCA is not here if it's not for community stakeholders giving us their feedback and leading us, the last 135 years till we got here, and we're going to be taking feedback for another 135 years. So I don't want to discount the fact that we didn't incorporate all the feedback into it, but the amount that we have is, like I said, more than I have on basically any other project in my career.
Perfect. Thank you very much. With that, the public portion of this hearing is concluded, and we will go with discussion, starting on my right.
I'll just address the last issue that was discussed, which was the symmetry of the windows. And I'd say if you look at all the elevations, it's just simply a pairing reversed, mirrored, and then copied. There's a tiny bit of asymmetry applied symmetrically. I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah, and it's not a cigar factory. We don't want it to look like a cigar factory. Cigar factories look like they look because they're of the function within. It is a completely different function than a cigar factory. I do commiserate with Mr. Fleischman's sadness at seeing his designs torn down, but if you live long enough, that's what happens. It's happened to me multiple times. I think the lighting cutoff is really critical, because to have lighting up that high, any type of spillage is going to go forever. So it's got to be really tightly cut off. I think it's a nice building. I'd like to see trees on the street. I'd like that setback, as you kept bringing up, the sidewalk to be a little wider, and for there to be some additional landscaping within that sidewalk right-of-way area. I'd love to see that if DOT allows it. No, I think there are ways of following the guidelines and being creative at the same time, and that's the actual spirit of the Secretary of the Interior standards where new construction is concerned. It should be of its time. It should be modern. It should be something that's not there, because the things that are there were built then, and this is being built now. So I find, yes, it needs more bike racks. I thought maybe that recessed area where the planting stops, that could be another bike storage area or something back there near the pool at the end. But again, things like that will evolve, and yeah, the e-bike, the proliferation of e-bikes downtown. I live downtown. I mean, you need a lot of room for an e-bike to go by, just one, and one pedestrian. There's a lot of issues with that kind of traffic passing back and forth. So I think that needs to be looked at a little carefully. But otherwise, I think I think it's a building Tampa can be proud
of. I concur. I think it's a building that Tampa will be proud of. I think that there are certain areas that could use a little bit more refinement and closer attention to the needs of the surrounding people. I personally would also like to see a column at the corner of the building at Florida and Ross. However, I am not holding the pencil. And I think to request symmetry in of the very strict sort that was suggested by a member of the public does not really follow the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines. And this is certainly one of the finest facades that I have, that we are going to see along Florida Avenue. There's some pretty drear stuff out there that's being built. So while I would encourage further refinement, even putting some windows on the east side on the 4th floor at the southeast corner, again, I'm not holding the pencil. So I think this one is ready. Thank you.
Yeah, I do think it's a nice building. I commend the association for coming and continuing to voice their concerns. I'm glad to hear that everybody did try to meet and talk and work through the issues. I do like that there's landscaping all around. I do think it softens it. I think for the community, it softens the area, particularly if you're living in one of the residences behind it. To see trees, would be nice. But you got a lot that you're working with the FDOT. So, but I do thank the association also for coming and continuing to voice and make it known that they still had some concerns. I agree. I think we have to allow some creativity for the building, and not have it look like a cigar factory. We have those, and those need to be preserved where they are. But I think it's a great building, and I appreciate the YMCA working with the neighborhood as it did, and continuing to take the comments of the association and integrate it as much as it can, even going forward. So I would vote in favor of it.
And I concur with everything that's been stated so well, so I support the application as well.
Yeah, I would just tell the applicant, again, reiterate, I'm glad we're getting community communication. I appreciate residents coming out to speak on this project. I know this will continue to be massaged as you move forward, and I would urge the applicant to bear that in mind as you move forward and see what you could do. The sidewalks, you'll never regain that space, and we're getting more and more density. Whatever you can do, in my career, we have found that 12 feet becomes a small sidewalk when it gets crowded. So bear it in mind, see what you can do, but it was a nice presentation, and I think this will be a nice addition to the community. With that being said, we're looking for a motion.
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for ARC 24000368, located at the, is there an address on here? At 1905 North Florida, with the following conditions: that the applicant examine further widening of the sidewalks and tree landscaping opportunities along the major streets as DOT allows, and that the lighting on the rooftop be 100% dark sky compliant and 100% cutoff to adjacent properties. Because, based on the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Tampa Heights design guidelines of the City of Tampa and Chapter 27 of the Tampa ordinances.
Okay.
I second the motion.
We have a second. Does the applicant understand the conditions? Okay, discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Congratulations. Okay, last order of business will be a motion to receive and file submitted documents and exhibits.
So moved?
All right, all in favor?
I'll s-
We've got a second, no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.